Welcome back to the Likes Purana, the geography series. Now in today's section, we are going to discuss about these topics on mangroves and coral reefs or coral structures. Now here when you talk about these mangroves and coral structures, this is part of the geographical phenomena, the diversity that is present, the flora and fauna topic with respect to your syllabus. And when you talk about that particular topic in the syllabus, your flora or fauna, one aspect that you need to understand is that the coral as well as the mangroves both are very, very important. For the reason that the diversity of these ecosystems are very, very important for the preservation and for conservation. And not only that, both of these are very, very important for the reason the threat perception that they are facing. That in that context, we need to understand, suppose if you are making the notes upon these, one thing is we have to understand what are the conditions for the mangrove structures to exist. And apart from the conditions, what are the specific characteristics with respect to the mangrove structure, as we know that mangrove is an ecotonic structure. It is an estuarine structure. It is such a kind of diversity which is resultant of an edge effect. Right? All this phenomena you would have said it. So we have to talk about certain specific characteristics, maybe the pneumatophores, maybe viviparity, right? Distilled roots, all these are certain specific characteristics of mangroves, right? So apart from this specific characteristics, we would also have to discuss about what is the status of mangroves. And the status of the mangroves can be taken up from the Indian State of Forest report, which has been released recently. And once we discuss about the status, we have to talk about what are the threats that are present with respect to the mangroves. And once we discuss about what are the threats that are present with respect to mangroves, then we would also have to talk about what are the conservation methods that are present. The conservation methods not only in the context with respect to what is existing, and we would also have to talk about what are the governmental measures or what are the international measures that are present. For example, when we talk about mangroves for future, MFF, the mangroves for future is one such phenomena that is generally seen, right? Then we will also have to go for the what can be the conservation measures that can be suggested with respect to mangroves. Then when we talk about the coral reefs, the corals as a biodiversity, they are the evergreen forests of the oceanic systems. And when we talk about the corals, we also have to talk about what are the specific conditions for its presence. What are the specific conditions for its presence? It might be with respect to the temperature levels, it might be with respect to the salinity levels, it might be with respect to the sedimental presence. So all these aspects have to be mentioned. Once we talk about the specific conditions with respect to the coral reefs, then we have to talk about what are the threats that are present with respect to the coral reefs. And once we discuss about what are the threats that are present with respect to the coral reefs, the immediate thing that we have to talk about is what is the conservation measure that is present. Right? What is the conservation measure? And you can talk about certain innovative measures, for example, the bio-rock technology. That is a kind of conservation measure. Right? All these aspects have to be discussed whenever you are making notes on such a topic. Right? Moving on to the sample question, we will look at the sample question, discuss the causes of depletion of mangroves and explain their importance in maintaining the coastal ecology. Let's look at that question, right? So, our own structure that we follow. First thing is we have to look at what are the keywords. And when we look at what are the keywords in this question, they are asking about the causes of depletion. The causes of depletion, the causes of depletion of mangroves, and also their importance. And also their importance in which context? In maintaining the ecological or the coastal ecology. This has to be ensured. So, these are the keywords, and once we have these keywords, we know that the immediate impact is going to be what is the structure. And when you talk about the structure, the first part of the question has to be with respect to what are the causes of depletion. And once we discuss about what are the causes of depletion, then we also have to talk about what is its importance. And once we discuss about what is its importance, we also certainly need to talk about what are the measures that can be taken. What are the measures? Because the causes for depletion are being discussed. So we have to certainly talk about what are the measures that are going to exist with respect to preservation of such a thing. And once we have the structure, then moving on to the content part. Now let's have a look at the content part, and when we look at the content part, you would see that we have introduced it with respect to the mangrove being an estuarine ecosystem. Mangrove being an estuarine ecosystem, it fundamentally shows to the examiner that you understand the ecological perspective of mangroves. And then talk about what is the threat perception, you talk about what is the levels of depletion. to make the answer more objective. And when we talking about the levels of depletion, we talk about 35% depleted and 92% under threat. That is a huge levels of threatening element that is present with respect to the mangrove as an ecosystem. And once we have this introduction, then we talk about the causes of depletion. That might be the climate change phenomena, that might be with respect to sea level rise, coastal erosion, or that might be with respect to the alien species, that might be the over harvesting. Because when you look at the mangrove structures, it is not only having an ecological importance, but it also has an economic importance for the reason that you would get a special kind of timber. Right? So we talk about the over harvesting. Then apart from that, the destruction of the surrounding ecosystems, which also impacts the mangrove structure. Apart from that, we can even talk about the water pollution levels, for the reason that a specific condition has to be maintained for a mangrove structure to flourish. That's what we discussed, that it is an estuarine ecosystem, it is an ecotonic kind of ecosystem that has to exist. We discuss all these aspects. So these are the different causes of depletion. Then once we talk about the causes of depletion, we talk about what is the importance of mangroves in maintaining coastal ecology. As we know that this is an ecotone, it is fundamentally characterized with large diversity. It is going to support large diversity. The second aspect that you need to talk about is it would also maintain the aquatic ecosystems, it would also maintain the diversity of fish, fishing capacity. And apart from that, it also acts as a breeding grounds for the reason that the mangrove structures can be certain ecological niche for some of the organisms. So those are also maintained. Then the ecological services that are fundamentally provided, the shock absorbers, it acts as a shock absorber. For example, when you look at this 2004 tsunami, there is one very, very specific case study that certain tribes of the Andaman and Nicobar were saved from the impact of the tsunami was purely because of conservation of the mangroves. And when you look at certain other mangroves like a Pichavaram region, right, these are also acting as a shield from the tsunami, right. So this also prevents what? This also prevents certain phenomena like coastal erosion. So when you talk about the mangroves, it is going to be a kind of shock absorber, it is going to be a kind of buffer, it is going to be a kind of buffer. Then once we talk about these importance, then we can talk about certain measures. As I told already that we can talk about mangroves for future. Right, we can talk about certain conservation mechanisms so that you would promote this kind of ecosystem. And once we discuss that, you can conclude that the protection of the mangrove is the need of the hour to leverage its versatile significance, for the reason that we have been emphasizing that it is an ecotonic ecosystem, that it has lot of significance for the reason that there is so much of diversity that is exist. And with that, now we will move on to the +1 strategy. And when we talk about the +1 strategy with respect to such a question, one +1 strategy we can follow is map with respect to the sites of mangroves. Map with respect to the sites of mangroves. Now when we talk about the map with respect to the sites of mangroves, we can talk about the aspects with respect to the Ratnagiri region, the Pichavaram region, right? The Kolleru region. All these regions are going to be characterized with respect to lot of mangrove structures. Now this can be one particular map that can be emphasized. Then apart from this particular thing, then we can even talk about the certain data elements with respect to the Indian State of Forest report that are specifying with respect to the mangrove structures in India. Okay, so this is a straightforward question, but very, very important question for the reason that this has a lot of probability for it to be repeated in the future examination. Now let's look at a practice question. And when you look at a practice question, right, we will take this particular question that assess the impact of global warming on the coral life system with examples. Now here please remember that we have to certainly substantiate whatever points we are making with examples, right. For this model answer, please look at the link that is provided in the description.